Hey gang, it's Squill, and we are doing something a little different today. So, about a week ago, I created this poll. I posted it here on YouTube. I posted it on Twitter, and it was basically inspired by Shafril's Mario character community ranking he did a couple weeks back. Um, but it was for Adventure Time instead of Mario. And so basically, you would submit 5 characters from any piece of Adventure Time media. It doesn't just have to be the show necessarily. They could be from comics or video games or whatever. And yeah, I just see which characters ended up ranking the highest, and just discuss the results. I thought it'd be a fun idea. And Adventure Time is a good show to do it with, just because like it has such a wide cast of characters. But yeah. So this is gonna be more of a laid back, very not very scripted or edited type of video, but I thought it'd be fun. Alright, so before, I have my notes here. Before we get on to the list itself, I have a small, not that small, a list of characters who are notably absent. These are characters who nobody voted for. Oh, and I should state before, we had 90 people, voting on this. So of the 90 votes, nobody voted for the following characters, which I find interesting. So we have Lady Rainicorn, Lemongrab, Golb, Jake Jr., Kim Kilwan, Slime Princess, Turtle Princess, Kinavu, Joshua, Margaret, Mr. Pig, Gumbald, Lolly, Chiclay, and Hunson Abadir. And of course, these aren't the only characters nobody voted for. I'm sure there's a few other, notable characters, that I didn't get here that aren't on the list at all. But I don't, I can't name all of them. But yeah, so nobody voted for those characters. So sad. But that's how it be. So those were the notably absent characters, but we have one more little section before we can go on to the list itself, and these are the honorable mentions. Basically, these are characters that people submitted that did not count for the actual list. They broke the rules. So it's a pretty wacky list, so, here it is. We have we have the creature from under the sink, the creeper from Minecraft, the treehouse, and Brian David Gilbert. So the creature from under the sink is, a character from a SpongeBob short. Well, it is SpongeBob, but like he'd be evil. That was thanks to my good pal Bruno. That's an inside joke. Obviously not a true Adventure Time character. Doesn't count for the list, but he would be number 1 if he did count. The creeper, I like that someone suggested, because they probably said that with Diamonds and Lemons, the Adventure Time Minecraft crossover in mind, but the creeper does not appear in Diamonds and Lemons. You could have said Endermen or the Minecraft skeletons, but the creeper does not appear in Diamonds and Lemons, so unfortunately does not count as an Adventure Time character. The treehouse is not a character, it's a location, it's a setting. And Brian David Gilbert is the voice of the Winter King. So he also does not count. Sorry. So, in 18th place, all of these characters had only got 1 point. Only one person voted for them, and it's quite the list, so strap in. We have Cake, Starkey, Gary, Billy, the Head Marauder, Adventure Tim, Schwabble, Tiny Manicore, Carol, TV, Charlie, Bubafina, Frida, Rosalyn, Shelby, The Star, Breezy, Tree Trunks, Pond Swan, Candy Queen, Bob's Prince, Evergreen, Lemon Hope, Bronwyn, Candian, The Water Nymphs, Musical, Fight Cane, Susan, Giuseppe, Banana Man, Shoko, the Duke of Nuts, Cinnamon Bun, Flame Cane, the Waving Snail, the Life-Giving Magi, Ghost Princess, Viola, Death, Princess Monster Wife, the Tart Toter, Hunter, Abracadaniel, Raggedy Princess, the Snow Golem, and gender-swapped Ash. So, obviously, I can't talk about all these characters, this is a pretty long list. But there's a few, pretty big ones here that only got 1 point. I mean, Tree Trunks only getting 1 vote is crazy. Tree Trunks is an amazing character. You should all watch my Tree Trunks video. I'd even say, Cake is, a pretty big one, who only got 1 vote. But, yeah, I mean, I'm happy Adventure Tim got a vote, a comic exclusive character. That's pretty cool. Someone voted for him. Yeah, oh, Susan is another big one. Yeah, Cinnamon Bun. Yeah. Okay, characters with 2 points who ended up at 17th place. This is a much shorter list. We have Minerva, we have Water Park Prank Finn, who technically counts as a different character because in the final season 1 episode of Fiona and Cake Cheers, it is confirmed that Water Park Prank universe is separate from the main OO, and thus the Finn we see in that episode is a different character. We have Martin, Farm World Finn, the Winter King, Princess Cookie, the Freak Deer, Choose Goose, Sweet Pea, and James Baxter. I will note about Sweet Pea. I counted 2 votes for him, but one of the votes just called him Baby Lich, and I'm not sure if they actually meant the Baby Lich that we very briefly see in Baby World in the Winter King. So if you put Baby Lich and meant it as the Baby World Lich, I'm very sorry. I counted it as a vote for Sweet Pea. I was definitely disappointed that Martin didn't get more votes. I think Martin is a great character. I think he's in my top 15 favorite characters maybe. Yeah, I think he should have gotten more. But it's cool that he ended up at the same place as Minerva. That's pretty funny. Yeah, the Freak Deer got 2 votes. That sure is something. Yeah, that's pretty much the only character I'm like, oh man, I really wish this character was higher. I mean, I like Farm World Finn, I like the Winter King, I like Sweet Pea, but Choose Goose, yeah, I don't know. Okay, at 16th place, all of these characters got 3 points, and it was only 3 characters this time. We have the Vampire King, Tiffany, and Jermaine. So, I think from this point on, I can pretty much just talk about all of the characters. Yeah. I'm a pretty big fan of Jermaine, personally. He doesn't appear all too much, but I really like him as, I guess just as, a contrast to, Finn and Jake. Mostly in his debut episode, he sort of, Ample Samuel compared, Jermaine's, titular episode to Homer's enemy from The Simpsons. And I think that's a very apt comparison. Because, both Jermaine and Frank Grimes, are sort of, the antithesis to the protagonists of the show, Jermaine is sort of, I don't know, just, I guess I really like the idea that, like, I don't know, that, like, Jermaine was sort of, left behind. Jake is, this magic stretchy dog. Finn is one of the only humans, so he's sort of special in that way. But Jermaine is just kind of like the other kid, But he is the only one of them, between him, Finn, and Jake, who is related to Margaret, biologically. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. Tiffany, I think, is a great character. I love just like his dramatic, like his little baby voice, but like he says, like, I don't know, just gives like these big dramatic monologues. I think it's really clever what they did with him in Together Again, because like Finn in that special has sort of become Tiffany. He's sort of become like codependent and like obsessed with his time with Jake and getting that back. And so I think having Tiffany there to sort of mirror Finn in that special is really cool. Yeah, he's definitely like, I guess this applies to both Tiffany and Jermaine, but those are two characters who, like, man, I wish they appeared more. I wish the show did a little bit more with them. But it is what it is. And the Vampire King, he's cool. I feel like they kind of, I don't know. I feel like in Checkmate, they kind of made him like a little too like pathetic for my liking. But I liked him a lot in the Star, even though that's not technically the same character. That's an AU of him. He was really cool there. Yeah, I don't really have a ton to say about the Vampire King. Okay, in 15th place, we have, with 4 points, we have a tie between 4 characters. We have Root Beer Guy, Nepter, Mr. Fox, and Peppermint Butler. Right off the bat, I'm so happy that Nepter got a few points. I'm a Nepter guy. I love Nepter. I love that he, like, I don't know, I love that he sort of becomes like, I guess, the butt monkey of the show. Like everyone just kind of craps on him. But he's so likable though. He's just a little guy. I love Nepter. I'm a big Nepter guy. I wish they brought him back in some way. In one spin, and just, I don't know. They gotta do more with Nepter. I'm a big Nepter fan. I'm also glad Mr. Fox got pretty high. I'm a big fan of just like, I don't know, just like his casual sort of voice. His like, oh, hey guys. I'm a big fan of like, just Tom Herpich's like just casual delivery, like he's just kind of like a normal guy, he's just like, I think that's just really funny. I like what they do with him in Together Again. And yeah, I mean, Mr. Fox is a great character. Root Beer Guy is pretty cool. I like him, a lot in his debut episode, his titular episode. It was kind of a novel concept to like focus an entire episode on, a candy citizen, and for like Finn and Jake to be sort of side characters in that episode. I don't really love what they do with him after that. Like, I mean, I like when he shows up in like Abstract and Simon Petrikov, but I don't really like the way they just like nonchalantly kill him off in something big, and then I don't really like Cherry Cream Soda as an episode at all. I think that one's kind of dumb. But I mean, I liked when Dirt Beer Guy showed up again, after that. I love whenever he says, "Oh, well, that's really something." And Peppermint Butler is cool. Just like I don't know. It's just kind of funny to have like, this like, seemingly nothing, butler character also just be like a dark wizard and just really into like, I don't know, just into crazy stuff like that. I don't really love what they do with him in Wizard City. I think they like play too hard into like his evil side. When he was really always more of like just kind of a chaotic neutral type of character to me. So I don't really love that. But yeah, Peppermint Butler is a great character as a whole. Okay, 14th place with 5 points. We have 3 characters. We have Gunter, LSP, and Marshall Lee. LSP, I'm not surprised she didn't get too high on here. She's a pretty love her or hate her character. I think she's pretty funny most of the time, but there are episodes where she's the protagonist that I'm just not into her, like Princess Day or The Prince Who Wanted Everything. But as a whole, I think LSP is really pretty fun. I love her role in Elements a lot. I think she's pretty much perfect there. I think she's definitely one of those characters who's like, I think she's better as like a side character, like a comic relief kind of character, than like the starring protagonist. Marshall Lee is pretty cool. He's definitely like, obviously, as you can tell by his placement on this list, he's definitely the most popular Fiona NK character besides Fiona herself. Donald Glover is obviously great as him. I hope he's able to come back for season 2. It'll be a real bummer for Donald Glover to have left 2 of my favorite shows, both Adventure Time and Community. So I hope he comes back in season 2 of Fiona and Cake. But yeah, I mean, he's a cool. I love just his like anarchist, laid back sort of persona. I think Marshall Lee was pretty cool. And Gunter, this is Gunter. I don't really have a ton to say. I don't really like Orgalore. But yeah, I mean, Gunter's fine, I don't have much to say about him. Okay, 13th place with 7 points. We have only 2 characters this time. We have Prismo and Magic Man. These are both characters I like quite a bit. Prismo is just like, I don't know, he's one of those characters who like doesn't show up a ton, but like whenever he does, it's like, oh man, this is a big episode, like it always feels big when Prismo is involved in the story. But it's also funny because he's also just like this very laid back kind of guy. I love, like, I don't know, I love Adventure Time's approach to like these sort of like cosmic deities almost, where they're still just like regular people, Prismo's just kind of a dude. Yeah, I personally do ship him with Jake. Yeah, Prismo's great. And we'll probably see more of him in Fiona and Cake season 2. I imagine they'll follow up like the weird like sort of glitch thing they did with him like at the very end of Cheers, where he was sort of glitching out a bit. So I wonder what's gonna happen with that. Maybe maybe they'll do something with his relationship with Scarab. I don't know, but I really like Prismo. And Magic Man is also, a fun character. He gets a little overshadowed in my mind by the other Adventure Time character voiced by Tom Kenny, who has, who goes through a magical sort of transformation and then goes back to being a normal person. But Magic Man is definitely different from Ice King in a lot of ways. He's he's more of a trickstery type character. Tom Kenny does a great voice for him. Um, and I also like Normal Man quite a bit. I like that even after like Magic Man has gone back to being a normal person, like he's still kind of a douche, you know, like especially in Temple of Mars, where it's like empathy, Finn. um, I don't know. Magic Man's a great character. He's one of those characters like who should definitely should have shown up more. They kind of do like, and they kind of do a lot of episodes like All the Little People or Everything's Jake, where like he'll like he'll show up for a little bit. He'll be like the inciting character of that episode, but then just kind of dip for the rest of it. Food Chain is another example. And so it does kind of make me wish there were more episodes where like Magic Man, was more prominent. Even like Time Sandwich, he's a little more. He's in that episode a little more, but for most of it, he's like, almost frozen. Um, but yeah, I mean, great character. I can't argue with this placement here. And at number 12, we have our first character to have a placement on this list, all of their own, no ties. And from here on out, there are no more ties. There's a few that are pretty close, but we have no more ties. At 12th place with 8 points, we have Huntress Wizard. Yeah, so Huntress Wizard is pretty cool that she got this high, for such a minor character who, first appears pretty late into the original series. But she's probably gonna end up having a major role in Fiona and Cake Season 2 based on all of the, leaks we know about. Yeah, Huntress Wizard is she's definitely like a cool character, like just like her design, her voice, Jenny Slate. I hope they get Jenny Slate back, cause she was listed TBA on the like Fiona and Cake Season 2 sort of cast listing thing. So I really hope they get Jenny Slate back. Yeah, I mean, she's not a character with like a ton going on. So it'll be interesting to see like what they do with her in season 2 of Fiona and Cake, because she's sort of a blank slate in a way. She doesn't appear in a ton of episodes. Really, the only thing there is her past with like the spirit of the forest and her relationship with Finn. So it's possible that those could be touched on. I like the idea that like Finn and Huntress Wizard have sort of a friends with benefits thing going on. Okay, at 11th place with 12 points, we have Flame Princess. Yeah, I'm not surprised Flame Princess got about here. She's definitely like a well-liked character in the fandom. I mean, she was definitely, I feel like, the most popular when when it felt like, I guess, the fandom like had more of a focus on the shipping aspect of Adventure Time, Finn and Flame Princess. So when they were dating during that short period of the show, like it felt like that's when the Flame Princess fandom was most active, I guess. But that's not to say she's an unpopular character now. I guess it's sort of just like, I guess it's just like, the show hasn't done anything with her in like 7 years. Not really since Son of Rat Bear. She hasn't shown up in Distant Lands or Fiona and Cake. I mean, she appears in the intro to Distant Lands, and we see DJ Flame, her gender swapped human counterpart, in Fiona and Cake, but that's about it. And so, we haven't gotten a ton of new Flame Princess material, which is a bit of a bummer. But yeah, I mean, Flame Princess isn't really a favorite character of mine. I feel like she does sort of feel like an afterthought sometimes. Like, oh, we have to do a Flame Princess episode this season because she's a pretty big character. And I'm not really a big fan of like the rapping thing, but I mean, she has a cool design, and there's interesting aspects of Flame Princess as a character, like her being locked up for so many years and sort of like experiencing just the world for the first time. There's her anger issues, her elemental abilities. She's a good character, just not like, just one I feel like, she could be better, like they could do more with her. Like I could see, I can definitely see like an alternate universe where I'm putting her in like my top 10 favorite characters. But I still like her. Okay, we are now entering the top 10. At number 10 with 13 points, we have Fiona. So obviously Fiona as a character has definitely gained a bit more popularity after the spin-off released. I mean, she was always a popular character. Obviously not everyone, but a lot of people love the Fiona and Cake episodes. They sort of have like a fandom of their own, in a way. But I definitely feel like Fiona probably wouldn't be this high if it weren't for the spinoff. And it's definitely interesting the way that like the Fiona and Cake spinoff sort of like, I don't know, sort of like reinterprets Fiona as a character into being like, I guess, this like realistic version of Finn, like the Finn if you lived in like an actual human world, and also was a girl. Yeah, I mean, like, I like her arc quite a bit in Fiona and Cake about Fiona learning to appreciate the life she already has. She's definitely a fun character. I know I've seen some people say that like, oh well, Fiona and Cake Fiona is basically just an entirely different character from Fiona in the original show, and like, I guess, but I mean, Fiona in the original show was like barely a character, so I don't really see how that's a criticism. They just like they sort of extrapolated upon the idea of like, the girl version of Finn, like I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Fiona in the spin-off would be kind of boring if she had the exact same personality as she did from the original show. But that's whatever. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I quite like Fiona. Again, I do wonder like how far she'd make it on this list if it weren't for the spin-off. But I don't know. I mean, she's a popular character either way. Okay, at 9th place with 14 points, we have the Lich. So the Lich is obviously a very cool character. I mean, like, just like his design, just his presence, like whenever he shows up, even in like his weaker appearances, like Crossover or Whispers, like it still like feels like big, it's still like, oh shit, it's the Lich. I really love his like reveal in Together Again, where like they sort of cycle through like all of the different like Lich encounters throughout the series. That's a crazy cool shot. I love that shot. Um and yeah, I mean like I don't I probably wouldn't personally put the Lich this high up on like my favorite characters list. Um just because I see him more as um like a force of nature than an actual like character. Obviously he is a character, but like I see him, I see him more as like I guess just like a representation of like just all things, just pure evil. um, but I mean, obviously Fiona and Cake kind of contradicts this with what they do with the Lich. Which I don't mind. I actually quite like what Fiona and Cake does with the Lich. Sort of humanizing him more. I think it's interesting, and I think it works. For a version of the Lich, who did accomplish his goal of destroying all life. It's sort of like, okay, well, what now? I think it's cool that the show explored that. Yeah. And obviously, um his his big monologue scene in Escape from the Citadel is like one of the best moments of the whole show. Just like, it's so chilling, it's so eerie, and that followed by like him like horrifically transforming into Sweet Pea. I don't know, that's just that's all just really good. Yeah, the Lich. I mean, like he was really the first like big threat in Adventure Time. I like the way they even have like Jake acknowledge that in Mortal Folly, where he says that this is our first like Fate of the World deal. I think he definitely marks like a bit of a turning point for the series, in a way, and for that he's a very significant character. At 8th place with 16 points, we have Fern. So this is probably the most surprising character on this list. I mean, I expected Fern to do fairly well, but I did not expect him to, beat characters like the Lich or Fiona or Flame Princess. I mean, Fern did pretty damn well here. Like, I think he's probably like the character, I don't know, like the character who did like the best, like compared to how I thought they do, and I can't really blame anyone for voting for Fern, because Fern is just such a cool idea for a character, just like this sort of double, like this sort of this version of Finn who didn't go through the same character development, post Is That You, this like, he wants to be like our Finn. He wants to be the hero, but like everyone just kind of sees him as like grass Finn, and he sort of he tries to carve a new identity for himself, but he can never really like let go of the life that he used to have, or at least that he thought he used to have. I still have like my criticisms of the way that they sort of handle Fern after Three Buckets. I think that well, even before Three Buckets, I think he definitely should have had like more episodes, or like I think he should have appeared in more episodes where he wasn't like the main focus of that episode. That doesn't really happen. It's pretty much only like the invitation and kind of Elements, but Elements doesn't really count because he's not himself there, obviously. And I always like the idea of like an episode between Islands and Elements, where like Fern and Nectar go on an adventure, and we sort of see like the beginning, like the elementification of Ooh, sort of begin. Um, I always thought that was a cool idea. And then after in season 10, I think Vern definitely just should have had more screen time in general. I feel like his dynamic with Gumball is very underplayed. I think they could have had like um I feel like I feel like they could have had like a sort of similar or a sort of like parallel dynamic to Finn and PB. Um, I feel like they definitely could have done something with the Gumball and Fern dynamic. Um, and I think I like what they do with him and Come Along With Me, but I also think it's a little rushed, you know. Um, I guess Fern just should have had more time dedicated to him in general, especially in season 10. Um, but I still can't I still love Fern as a character. He'd probably make my top 10 favorite characters, maybe top 15. He's still just like a really cool character. Um, Especially, for one who appears who first appears so late into the show, Um, I'm sure a lot of more casual Adventure Time fans don't even know Fern is a character. Um, so yeah, cool that he made it this high. I'm a big fan of Fern. At 7th place with 17 points, we have Betty. I am so glad Betty made it this high. I am a big fan of Betty. She's one of my personal favorite characters. And I think, for a character who just doesn't get that much screen time, across the series, even including Fiona and Cake, she did pretty damn well here. And I think, what makes Betty such an interesting character to me is just I guess just how inherently just tragic her whole arc is. She pretty much centered her entire life around Simon. Her entire identity to the point where she sort of lost her own. I mean, she literally lost her own humanity. Sacrificing for him. And I think a lot of people. Sort of I don't know, try to paint the show, but more specifically Fiona and Cake, as I don't know, as trying to say that oh, Simon was the bad guy, but I think it's definitely a lot more complicated than that. Simon should have definitely noticed that Betty was sacrificing for him, but a lot of Betty's problems are sort of self inflicted, I guess. She, she definitely did choose she chose to center her whole life around Simon, and Simon was sort of he didn't really notice that that's what was going on. And which, I mean, he definitely should have he should have paid a bit more attention to that. But I don't really think it can be the problems with Simon and Betty's relationship can be put on either Simon or Betty individually. It's sort of I don't know. It's sort of just I guess bad circumstance, I guess. But at the same time, I also just don't agree that Simon and Betty were inherently toxic to each other. I think it's one of those things where there were problems with there were toxic elements of their relationship, but they were still. I mean, Betty says at the end in Cheers that she doesn't have any regrets. It's very clear at the end of the day that these two very much love each other. But and even aside from her dynamic with Simon, I think Betty's just like such a cool character. I love like her sort of corruption arc. Like her just becoming more like just more devoted to fixing Simon, and like just like I don't know, it's just like again, it's all stuff that like she does to herself, but you also just can't help but feel bad for her because she's doing it, out of just her want to get to get like her life back, to get like this thing, this relationship that she had that was, so important to her, that she lost, and now she doesn't really have anything. She's stuck in Ooh, with without anyone who really like gets her. And I think that's pretty tragic. But I could ramble on about Betty forever. One of these days I'm gonna do a whole Betty video, and it'll be like a million years long. At 6th place with 19 points, we have BMO. I feel like BMO maybe underperformed a little bit. Like, I don't know. I was expecting him to make the top 5. 6th place, definitely not far off from the top 5, and not bad as a whole. And I guess there are, like, some people who think BMO is, like, overrated. So I kind of get the placement here. I guess I was expecting him to be like number 4 or 5, instead of number 6, but it is what it is. Yeah, I like BMO. I'm not like the biggest BMO fan ever. I like BMO quite a bit. I think I think sort of similar to LSP, like he's sort of a character who works a bit better for me, like as a supporting character, as like a comic relief, than like episodes focused entirely on him. Like I'm not that into like BMO Noir or BMO Lost or Angel Face. But I know a lot of other people really like those episodes. And there are BMO episodes that I do really love. Like, I love The More You Mow, The More You Know is probably in my top 20 of the entire show. I like Catch Up a lot. I like Be More. I like his Distant Land special. And I think he's really great in Jerry. Just like, it's an alternate version of BMO, so, it doesn't count, but like, it's basically the same character. I love just like, I love just like, I think BMO adds a lot to the story, just like, in how, like, him, like, BMO dying, it's sort of just like, such a, like, dire mood, for, like, that episode. Because, like, BMO is just the most innocent, most pure character in all of Adventure Time. So to watch him, like, die on screen, and not even, like, and his death doesn't even, like, accomplish anything, Like, he didn't, like, sacrifice so that Simon and Fiona and Cake can, go to another universe, He just kind of dies, and that's it. And they bury him. Like, I don't know, it's just so bleak, But, BMO is also just, a very charming character. Nikki Yang does a great voice for him, just very, like, innocent sounding, and which makes it funnier when, like, BMO just says something, like, really dark out of nowhere. Yeah, I love BMO. I'm kind of, like, indifferent to, like, to Heyo BMO's existence, the BMO preschool show. I wasn't really clamoring for a preschool show focused on BMO, but, I'll watch it, I'll watch anything Adventure Time related. It's me we're talking about. And, I think, the idea of, like, I don't know. I think if they like still have BMO like say like kind of dark stuff in a little baby show, I think that'll be funny. And I like that Shelby's in it too. Shelby's a really funny character to have in the show for babies. um, yeah. That's about all I have to say about BMO here. Okay, at fifth place with 28 points, we have Princess Bubblegum. Yeah, this is about where I was expecting Bubblegum to land, because, you know, she is a very controversial character in a lot of ways. You know, I feel like every, like, freaking month on Twitter, there's, like, some sort of PB discourse, like, oh, she is an evil dictator, and it's like, get something new to talk about, man. I think PB is definitely one of my favorite characters. I think this year has been kind of like a PB centric year for my channel. You know, obviously I did that big PB video a while back, but even like, you know, I talked about PB a bit in my King of Zoo video, in my Lemongrab video, even the Tree Trunks video a little bit. A lot of PB talk this year for me, which wasn't really intentional, just kind of how things worked out. But I mean, you know, I think PB is like, there's definitely just like a lot to talk about with PB. You know, she's the third most prominent character in the entire show behind Finn and Jake. And, you know, she's such a, like, morally gray character, you know. There's a lot of stuff that, like, I mean, pretty much anything, you know, she does in the show, you can look at it as like, I don't know, you can, there's just a lot of different like lenses, yeah, you can view PB's character through. As much as annoying as like the PB is a dictator discourse comes from, and I don't think he's a dictator, but I see where it comes from, you know? Like I get why this discourse happens, you know, even if it's annoying. Because, like, I don't know, the show doesn't, like, hold our hands with PB, you know? Like, the show, it doesn't, like, PB will do something, and the show won't say, like, oh, okay, so this is bad that PB did this, or this is good that PB did this. It's, you know, sort of, you know, we can look at it, like, I don't know, like her killing the Rattleballs, for example, you know, that can be seen as, oh, well, PB just commit genocide here, which, kinda true, but these are also, like, robots who were designed to do a specific task, and they failed to do that task, and we don't know, like, how sentient PB viewed these robots as, you know, it's a moral gray area, is what I'm saying. And, you know, I think that's where just a lot of the discourse around PB comes from, is that, like, you know, again, the show doesn't tell us how to feel about her, so, you know, she's up to interpretation. People get into these crazy big arguments about her, because everyone sort of interprets her character differently. But, you know, I think that's also just a sign of, like, a well-written character, that you can take so many different things away from her. You can, you know, view her character in so many different ways. You know, she's not just, like, I don't know, she's a complicated person. And I think that's really cool about PB. So, yeah, I'm happy she got in the top 5, if just barely. I think, you know, I definitely hope to see, the sort of discourse around PB. You know, I hope to see it, like, turn into something more constructive, I guess, than just people pointing at her and saying, oh, PB's bad, you know? I think she's more complicated than just, oh, a bad person, you know? But yeah, I hope, I'm really hoping they do something with her in the movie, because I feel like, you know, PB hasn't really gotten a lot to do, you know, post the series with, Distant Lands and Fiona and Cake. Obviously, she has a pretty big role in Obsidian, but even that story is more focused on Marceline than PB, which is fair because, PB got more attention than Marceline in the original show, but I miss getting PB's stories. I hope the movie gives her something cool to do. Okay, in 4th place, we have Jake with 29 points, only just barely beating out PB by 1 point. So I feel like Jake kind of benefited from like, people getting to choose like 5 characters instead of just 1. Because I feel like Jake isn't a lot of people's favorite character, but I feel like he's in a lot of people's top 5, Like, I feel like he's, like, a lot of people's, like, 4th or 5th favorite character, which is probably about where I'd place him. I'd probably place him at number 5 or 6 on my character ranking. I think, he's definitely, of, like, the main characters, he's definitely, like, the most stagnant. Like, Jake doesn't really change that much throughout the show, and regardless of the season you're watching, Jake will be Jake. But the show does acknowledge that at certain points in episodes like Ocarina, Jermaine, Abstract, even like Cloudy, sort of acknowledging that Jake does have worries and fears. Like, he does, gets stressed about things like Finn does, but he sort of bottles it up more, because he wants to protect Finn. I always really liked that sort of character moment in Cloudy. Cloudy is such a great episode. Even though, he does have less character development than other characters, but I do feel like there is a value to Jake's presence on the show. The sort of, like, consistent like, mentor figure to Finn, even though he's not always a great mentor. Like, he gives kind of bad advice sometimes, especially related to PB. But, like, I think his dynamic with Finn, their brotherly bond, is, like, one of the most just appealing aspects of Adventure Time. There's such a, I don't know, this is such a wholesome dynamic between the two boys. It's like, with a lot of these, like, sort of shows about two protagonists, like, I don't know, like Rick and Morty, or, Mordecai and Rigby in regular show, like, they sort of, those characters sort of, argue a lot. They'll get into, like, little fights, which isn't, like, a bad thing, but I feel like, Adventure Time is very unique in that, like, these two main characters don't really get into arguments that often. They're pretty much almost always on the same page, with little exceptions here and there, like Who Would Win or Video Makers. For the most part, Finn and Jake are pretty much on the same page, which I like that. You can create conflict in other ways than just having the two main characters fight a lot. And obviously, like, Jake definitely has, like, just some cool visual gags with his stretching abilities, and John DiMaggio's voice for him is just perfect. Just, like, so, I don't know, just like, he has, like, that perfect, like, sort of big brother voice just in his inflections, and Jake is a great character. Okay, at number 3, with 50 points, we have Marceline. So, this is a little surprising for me, because I was expecting Marceline to be number 1 on this list. I always sort of had the idea that Marceline was, like, the fan favorite Adventure Time character, Like, she's the character that the most amount of people would say, oh, this is my favorite character in Adventure Time. And And I mean, she still did pretty well. 50 points, number 3 on the list. Like, that's quite a bit. Yeah, I don't think I'm, like, as big of a Marceline fan as, like, the average Adventure Time fan is. I'd say, you know, she's definitely, like, she's, like, number 5 or 6 for me. I sort of flip-flop between if I prefer her or Jake as, my 5th or 6th favorite character. I think, you know, I feel like a lot of her character is sort of, like, I don't know, it is sort of, like, attached to her dynamics with either, you know, PB or Simon, slash Ice King. Which, I mean, you can say the same about Betty, who's my 2nd favorite character in the show, that, like, you know, she's like, pretty much completely attached to her dynamic with Simon. But with Betty, that's sort of the point, you know, like, is that, like, she has this unhealthy obsession with Simon. With Marceline, it sort of feels like, after a certain point, they don't really know what to do with her as a character. But, I mean, I'm not gonna rag on Marceline. I mean, she's still, you know, a fantastic character. I think, I mean, obviously she provides for a lot of the best, like, musical moments in the show. Olivia Olson has a great singing voice, and, you know, and I think Marceline does have, like, a pretty, like, cool arc across the early seasons of the show, of, like, you know, she's sort of, like, this jaded, you know, sort of loner type of character, and then, you know, she meets Finn and Jake, who, you know, who show her, you know, who show her a bit of friendship, a bit of that, like, compassion, and empathy for people that she was kind of missing for a while, and that kind of makes her, that sort of slowly lets her open up to other characters like PB and Ice King again, and I really like that. I really love her dynamic with Finn, and I wish they got more screen time together after season 3, because, you know, I mean, I did a whole video about it, but it definitely feels like, it definitely feels like Marceline becomes, like, so much of a PB and Simon focused character that, they lose that, like, wonderful dynamic she had with Finn early on in the show. But I do like that, that the spin-offs have tried to, like, sort of bring the, like, trickstery side to Marceline back, with the flashbacks in Obsidian, and as well as, like, her being the antagonist in The Star, which, you know, The Star is a different character than Marceline, but, you know, I like that, like, that aspect of her character is sort of, the show started to bring that back a bit. Yeah, I do, I do hope that, like, and this applies to PB too, I do hope, that at some point, like, we get more stories, more Marceline stories that don't really have much to do with PB. I mean, PB can still be in them, but, you know, it sort of feels like PB and Marcy are sort of attached at the hip to each other nowadays, which, you know, obviously, you know, in some ways was great because, you know, they weren't allowed to do much with them, during the original show because of censorship, but also, I do want them to be treated more as, like, individual characters, but, yeah, you know, Marceline, number 3 on this list, pretty good. Okay, at number 2, with 51 points, just barely beating out Marceline, and I mean just barely, like the final, submission I got for this list, just barely beat Finn, out over Marceline. So, Finn is number 2 on this list. You know, obviously, I mean, should have expected this. Finn is the main character. He's the character with the most amount of screen time. Um, and I can't really be mad about him being number 2 on this list. Obviously, Finn is just a fantastic character. Um, I think, um, man, there's so much to say about Finn as a character. I don't really know where to start here. I guess like he is like just such a like fantastic protagonist character because you know especially if you started watching the show as a kid, you sort of grow up with Finn. As Finn um goes through like new experiences in his life, a lot of the audiences like in their first crush or their first romance, you know being disappointed in a parent, um going through like I don't know, like having your sort of worldview changed in a lot of ways. I feel like Finn like very perfectly represents not just growing up, but just like how like being developing as a person, as a teenager, like I don't know, just how it like changes your worldview in a lot of ways. I really love the moment in Gumbaldia where like Finn and Jake are talking, and Finn's like, oh well, I used to be all about violence, but now I'm being diplomatic. He doesn't say that exactly, but I love that sort of self reflection moment for Finn where he realizes that like he is not the same person now that he is when he was 12. And if you watch a season 1 episode, and then watch the Finn episode in season 10 or even like season 6, they feel like two different characters because he's gone through so much. He's and it's like a very like I don't know, it's a very like subtle development too. It's not like one episode Finn just feels like he's a completely different character now than he is in the last episode. It's sort of just like a few just small things that sort of build over time and change Finn into being a different person at 17 than he was at 12. And yeah, I mean, Finn is just a great character. Um I'm excited to see what they do with him in the movie. Um it'll be interesting to see. I don't know, that it's probably the youngest we'll ever see him like post Come Along With Me. But yeah, and it's interesting, seeing him as an adult in Fiona and Cake. Seeing like how he copes, or I guess like fails to cope with losing Jake. Um, I yeah, you know, I don't know. Finn, great character. The second best according to you guys. And at number 1, with a whopping 65 points, we have, it's pretty obvious, Simon Petrikov, aka the Ice King. Um, I, again, I had no input in these rankings, but I mean, Simon and Ice King is also my favorite Adventure Time character and just favorite fictional character. Period. There's so much I could say about just this one character. I mean, like, man, I don't even know where to start. I do have to wonder. Same with like Fiona. I do have to wonder like how high he would have made this list if it weren't for Fiona and Cake, the spinoff. I think I mean he definitely still would have made it into like top 5. I feel like he might not have been number 1 if it weren't for Fiona and Cake. I feel like I feel like he might have been like number 3, um, if I had done this before Fiona and Cake came out. Um, but I mean, like, I feel like Simon slash Ice King represents just everything I love in a character. He is really funny. Tom Kenny's performance as him is amazing. He's tragic. He goes through a lot of interesting character development. He's just like, I don't know. It's just like everything I love in a character is represented within Simon and Ice King. And yes, I count Simon and Ice King as the same character. I know they act differently in a lot of ways, but I feel like both Simon and Ice King are more interesting characters, like, with the other, Like, I feel like counting Simon and Ice King as different characters is like saying that, like, Jimmy McGill is a different character than Saul Goodman, Like, they still are the same consciousness, and a lot of, like, in a lot of subtle ways, I feel like Simon comes out in Ice King. Um, like the way he treats the Princess Monster Wife in her titular episode. It feels like the way Simon would treat Betty. Or even like, the way he cares for Gunter and the penguins. It is reminiscent of the way that Simon cared for Marceline. So I feel like counting Simon and Ice King as two different characters sort of does them a disservice. And there was, I think, one submission that said Simon, but in parentheses said, just Simon, not counting Ice King. And I'm sorry to that person, but that's not how we do things. Simon and Ice King are the same character. They sure, they're different in a lot of ways, but you can't really have one without the other. And I mean, Simon's arc in Fiona and Cake is just like pretty much perfect. They do, like, I don't know, they do such a good job, like, capturing just like how out of place he feels in Ooh, without Betty, and just like his sort of his search for meaning, trying to, like, I don't know, trying to sort of, I guess, like, stop his sort of, like, obsession with sacrificing himself. The fact that he feels the need to put the crown back on to help other people because he doesn't value himself as an individual. He thinks that, like, he only has value if he's sacrificing for someone else. In this case, Fiona and Cake. I think it's sort of interesting how that, like, you can definitely see that in, like, Simon and Marcy, how he doesn't need to put the crown on a lot of the times. But he's sort of just become obsessed with, like, the idea of sacrificing for others. And that sort of mirrors the way that Betty sacrificed a lot for him, and I don't know, I really love that arc for him. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm pretty happy with these results. Again, Simon slash Ice King, my favorite fictional character of all time. And yeah, and that's about it for the list. I want to thank everyone who participated in the community poll. This was a lot of fun to do. It's just sort of interesting to see which characters were the most popular among the people who follow me on Twitter or watch me here on YouTube. Obviously, this shouldn't be seen as, like, a definitive thing, as like, oh yeah, these are definitively the most popular Adventure Time characters. Because, I mean, I only got 90 90 results, that's a pretty small pool to be working with. But it does sort of give you a general idea of like what characters, at least right now, are the most popular. Um, but yeah, I might, I might do this sort of thing again. I've been thinking maybe I could do, a community poll ranking for like the best episodes or the best songs or the best title cards. I don't know. We'll see. I'll give it some thought. Um, so yeah, that's about it. Thank you all for watching and have a good one. Squill out.